Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whichever is appropriate for you. This is a presentation from the Melbourne Business Network called Keeping Ahead in Uncertain Times. This is episode 4 in the series, Next Steps. My name's Brian Jones. I'm from Ahead for Business, and we are members of the Melbourne Business Network. Just a quick overview of what I'll be talking about today. Firstly, a summary of JobKeeper Relief number 1 before it phases away. And then we'll move straight to JobKeeper Relief number 3, the next phase, omitting JobKeeper Relief number 2. Then we'll move on to Apprentices and Trainees, some information on business investment support, some interesting information on the flow of credit support, various grants and relief available, and a miscellaneous section dealing with early access super, home builder, and the Fair Work Act. And now a standard disclaimer for all presentations. This is because individual cases do vary and it's impossible to cover every single angle in this presentation. Also, one of the things that's happening at the moment is that things keep changing. So this could be out of date almost as soon as you read it, unfortunately. So please seek advice from your trusted professional advisor or a government department. A recap of JobKeeper Relief number 1. This is due to last until the 27th of September 2020, so it's still very much in progress. This relates to a subsidy for employees employed as at the 1st of March 2020. But, and this is a major change, from the 3rd of August 2020, this date for JobKeeper 1 is now the 1st of July 2020. And this is almost certainly in recognition of the problems that have occurred in Victoria with an opening up of businesses in perhaps June and now back straight into lockdown. People could be employed in that period as businesses seek to reopen. The subsidy also expands to what's called business participants, and this involves sole traders, partners in partnerships, beneficiaries of trading trusts, and some shareholders in some companies. Turnover must have fallen by at least 30% on the same period last year, although there are alternative tests available. Employees must be paid a minimum of $1,500 in any one fortnight, but there are restrictions on who can receive JobKeeper, e.g. whether or not they are a permanent resident. Now the time periods for JobKeeper Relief number 3. The first is an extension period which goes from the 28th of September 2020 to the 3rd of January 2021, which is 7 fortnights. JobKeeper Extension 2 is from the 4th of January 2021 to the 28th of March 2021. There's separate testing for turnover decline for Extension 1 and for Extension 2. And a major change with JobKeeper Relief number 3 is there are 2 rates now. In JobKeeper 3, there will be a full-time rate and a reduced rate. With the full-time rate for employees for JobKeeper Relief under 3, it will be available if an employee was working in the 2 fortnightly pay periods before the 1st of July 2020. For a business or a not-for-profit for 20 hours per week or more on average. The reduced rate will be available for an employee working in the 2 fortnightly periods before the 1st of July 2020 for a business or not-for-profit for less than 20 hours per week on average. But here's a quirky side to this. For employees employed at the 1st of March, a comparison is made on hours between the 2 pay periods before the 1st of March and the 2 pay periods before the 1st of July, and the higher number is taken. To give you an example, if somebody was working 18 hours on average a week in March, at the 1st of March, and then 22 hours a week on the 1st of July, they would actually get the full-time rate, not the reduced rate. Business participants in JobKeeper 3 are defined in the same way as JobKeeper 1. There's a full-time rate and a reduced rate. An eligible business participant will be paid the full rate where they are actively engaged in their business for more than 20 hours per week on average for the month of June 2020. Conversely, an eligible business participant who actively worked in the business for less than 20 hours per week on average in the month of June 2020 will receive the reduced rate, but the Commissioner has the discretion to vary this requirement. And the payment rates available. Firstly, the full-time rates. In extension period 1, it will be $1,200 per fortnight. In extension period 2, it will be $750 per fortnight. With the reduced rates, it'll be $1,000 per fortnight in extension period 1, and it will be $650 in extension period 2. A key feature of JobKeeper Relief number 1 was that it was only necessary to satisfy the turnover decline test once, and then it was possible to receive relief, and still is possible to receive relief, right the way through until the 27th of September. With JobKeeper Relief 3, you have to satisfy the turnover decline test for JobKeeper Extension Period 1 and again for JobKeeper Period Extension 2. But the extent of the decline required is the same as in JobKeeper 1, and this is 30% for entities with a turnover under 1 billion per annum, but half that, 15%, for ACNC registered charities, so concessions to charities. For entities with turnover over 1 billion, and I'd like to know if we've got anybody in the Melbourne Business Network with a turnover of 1 billion, the requirement is a decline of 50% over the previous year. Decline in turnover test extension period 1. This is the actual GST turnover for the September 2020 quarter, which must be 30% less than the corresponding September quarter in 2019. So there has to be a decline of 30% or more for a 3-month period. The original JobKeeper 2 actually required a 6-month period of 30% decline, taking into account the June and September 2020 quarters. So this is making the claiming of relief a little bit easier, but no monthly comparisons are available year on year. And the corresponding decline in turnover test for extension period 2. This says that the actual GST turnover for the December 2020 quarter must be at least 30% less than the corresponding December 2019 quarter. So again, we've got a 30% or more decline for a 3-month period. In the JobKeeper 2, this was going to be a 9-month period. It was going to be necessary for the June, September and December quarters to fall by 30%. So this is an even stricter interpretation. Now this has become easier. So no monthly comparisons are still available in extension period 2. However, in both extension period 1 and extension period 2, there is an overriding discretion for the Commissioner to use alternative tests. Apprentices and trainees, there has been quite a significant change to the subsidy that was originally given for apprentices and trainees. Originally, small businesses with less than 20 employees could claim a subsidy for the period January 2020 to June 2020. This has now been extended for the period the 1st of July 2020 to the 31st of March 2021. But the size of the business that can claim has been increased from less than 20 employees to less than 200 employees. So that's quite a considerable increase. The subsidy for the apprentices or the trainees' wages has not changed and is subject to a 7,000 cap per quarter. But employers of any size, including group training organisations that re-engage eligible out-of-trade apprentices or trainees, will be eligible for the subsidy. The employee had to be in an Australian apprenticeship scheme as at the 1st of March 2020. It is not clear if this is going to change and become the 1st of July 2020 along with the main JobKeeper relief provisions. Now something on business investment support, and this involves the instant asset write-off. This was raised originally when COVID-19 stimuli were brought in from $30,000 to 150,000 for assets purchased up to the 30th of June 2020. This was for businesses with a turnover up to 500 million. Originally, it was only 50 million. This write-off, which is very generous for people who need to buy assets, is now extended to the 31st of December 2020. Flow of credit support. This relates to a coronavirus SME guarantee scheme introduced by the federal government. SMEs with up to 50 million turnover can qualify for this. Originally, 50% of the amount of new loans were guaranteed up to the 30th of September 2020. And the eligibility for this was the loans could not exceed 250,000, could not exceed a period of 3 years, although it did allow an initial 6-month holiday period, and must be unsecured. Now the scheme has been extended to the 30th of June 2021 with the following important changes. Loans can be up to 1 million, so that's 4 times the original amount. They can last for 5 years, and the loans can be for a broader range of purposes. Loans can also be secured or unsecured. Something now on grants and relief available. The Victorian Government has announced recently some important initiatives which involve somewhere in the region of about 530 million being available for help to businesses that have been affected by the COVID-19 crisis. Typically, one of these is a 10,000 grant for employing business in metropolitan Melbourne, which is a recognition for spending longer under restrictions, which of course we have. We had restrictions, they were eased, and now they're back into very strict lockdown. There's also a $30 million fund to support the nighttime economy. The details of that are uncertain, but certain businesses that operate through, or used to operate through the nighttime because of the curfew. There's a 10 million fund to support business mentoring programs, and there's 20 million fund to support small businesses in the Melbourne CBD who are faced with what's called a large and substantial shock in trading environments. These grants and reliefs are discretionary and are very similar to other forms of support given by the Victorian Government. In addition to the mandatory rental code that was introduced by the federal government, the City of Melbourne has some very specific relief for people affected by COVID-19. But this is rent relief for tenants in properties owned by the City of Melbourne, and typically those are retail, hospitality and tourist businesses. They can be small or medium, so they can be anything from 1 employee to 199 employees who can qualify. They must demonstrate hardship, so that's a discretionary area, and where possible offer continued employment. And I hazard a guess that those people who offer continued employment will get priority, and it's possible to apply online. There's also something called a rates hardship policy, which does apply to residential and commercial properties, but for commercial properties this involves a deferment of rates, and it can involve a suspension, reduction or even waiving of rates. Now some miscellaneous items which apply to everybody. The first is early access to super. This was originally announced and the closing date for this was going to be the 24th of September 2020, but it has now been extended to the 31st of December 2020. 10,000 can be withdrawn from a super fund by a member of any age up until the 31st of December. There is no need for a condition of release, but I would recommend that this is only used in an emergency, because these are funds that are provided for retirement. There's also a home builder initiative. This is a grant of up to 25,000 available to build a new home or to substantially renovate an existing home. Now, this may well have been in the planning stages before COVID-19 existed. The contract must be signed between the 4th of June 2020 and the 31st of December 2020, and construction must start within 3 months of the contract being signed. This is a federal initiative, but there is an arrangement with all the states and territories, which will mean these funds will be distributed at a state or territory level. So in our case, the Victorian government. And finally, something on JobKeeper and the Fair Work Act. With the initial introduction of JobKeeper, there had to be some amendments made to the Fair Work Act 2009 to facilitate temporary changes to employment conditions. These are due to finish on the 28th of September. As yet, no changes have been made to the legislation after that date, but I would anticipate that these would be completed to accommodate JobKeeper Extension 1 and JobKeeper Extension 2. And finally, some useful links where you can get very important information, which I would recommend you do on a regular basis because it seems to be changing at quite a rate. And although we've got the key websites, the Treasury website and the ATO general COVID-19 website area, I would suggest going to www.business.vic.gov.au for Victorian matters and www.melbourne.vic.gov.au/business for specifically the Melbourne City Council area issues. In addition, you can also email the Melbourne Business Network with any questions. So email those to admin@melbournebusinessnetwork.org.au, and I hope you found this presentation useful today.